Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video, and this one is going to be very interesting. We're going over the EA earnings call from the final quarter of their fiscal year. Many interesting things have been said there that allude to the fact that not only is Battlefield 6 going to release before March next year, but likely this year, and furthermore, a trailer and the reveal for the game may be right around the corner. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you're subscribed. Plenty more to come here on the channel. Follow me over on Twitch as well. You can find me there streaming from time to time. And thank you guys ever so much for your ongoing support. Really does mean the world to me. So before we jump into the transcript here and go over everything that Andrew Wilson, the CEO of EA, had to say about Battlefield, let me just clarify if you're not aware what an EA earnings call is. It's basically where Andrew Wilson and the CFO of the EA company sit down with their investors and explain how they are planning to make them money. They do this 4 times a year, every 3 months, once every quarter of the fiscal year, and this is the final one of this fiscal year. So first of all, in their report that they put out here before we got into the call with the investors, he had this to say. They said, as we look to the future, we are confident in our ability to execute across a deep pipeline beginning this summer with the highly anticipated reveal of Battlefield, a pivotal step in delivering on our next generation of blockbuster entertainment. So first thing I'm noticing here is that he's just calling it Battlefield, and I do think as time goes on, it's looking more and more likely that the name for the next Battlefield game is simply going to be Battlefield. Could be wrong. Some people think it's going to be Bad Company 3, some people think maybe Battlefield 6. I guess we'll find out soon enough though, because it does sound like we're going to be getting a trailer this summer, and it sounds highly likely that it will take place at some major gaming event. And then moving into the actual earnings call, in Andrew's opening remarks here, he says, in fiscal year 26, we are launching 2 of our most iconic franchises, Skate and Battlefield. So fiscal year for EA runs all the way from the end of March until the end of the following March. So basically what that means is that the next Battlefield is pretty much guaranteed to come out by the end of March next year in 2026. We have of course recently heard that Rockstar have delayed Grand Theft Auto 6, which was really the main obstacle in Battlefield's way if it was going to be releasing sometime this year. And so I think it is now highly likely that we will see Battlefield release this year at their regular release timing of October or November. Now, whilst there is a part of me, of course, that is really excited to play the new Battlefield game, get my hands on it as a player and as a content creator, there's also another part of me that has some worries. Looking at the current Battlefield Labs tests that we've seen leaked footage of and whatnot, it doesn't really look that finished, and if they're going to release the game in October or November, that only really gives them 4 or 5 months of time to work on the game. Now, some people point out that, of course, that is an older build, that's not the current branch of the build that they're working on for the final game, but then they also said the same thing to us in Battlefield 2042's beta. Remember that thing? Oh, it's an old build, everybody was kind of coping with that, and then the game came out, and it really wasn't that different to the beta. And indeed, if you are iterating on the main branch of the game, the other tangent, the other branch that goes off to the side that they create Battlefield Labs from, it can't be like that far behind the main branch of the game, because then it becomes too difficult to iterate on that main branch and introduce some of the feedback changes that we've found from Battlefield Labs, right? So that just wouldn't really make any sense. So I would guess that at most, it's only like maybe 2, possibly 3 months ahead. Now, that being said, this Battlefield game has had the longest development time of any Battlefield game, at least since like Battlefield 3 came out in 2011. It's got multiple studios working on it, so really, EA are throwing everything but the kitchen sink at this next title. The only sort of chink in the armor was, of course, that they had that whole debacle with Ridgeline Studios shutting down, and Marcus Leto, the Halo guy, he ended up kind of storming out of EA, or they kicked him out. We don't really know what happened, but it's clear they didn't leave on good terms, and it seems like they had to scramble a little bit. I think then they got Motive working on the campaign, but the good news is he was only working on the campaign, and whilst I do like a good campaign, it's not the most important part of a Battlefield game for me. So getting back to the EA earnings call, Andrew Wilson had quite a lot to say about Battlefield. So he says, turning to Battlefield, we are taking a modern player-first approach to building, testing, and marketing this next-level experience. Through Battlefield Labs, the biggest playtesting initiative in franchise history, we are engaging players earlier and more meaningfully than ever before, testing at scale and validating core gameplay experiences to deliver something truly special for our players. Through our play sessions with a core group of Battlefield players across Europe and North America, we've completed thousands of hours of gameplay, and the response has far exceeded expectations. Over 600,000 players have signed up for Labs to date, along with an amazing 350 million views of the Battlefield content since our announcement. I actually thought the amount of signups was over 1 million. I guess it wasn't quite that many, but nevertheless 600,000 is as a lot of people. Based on this incredible global demand, we are expanding Labs by inviting more players across Europe and North America, and will begin to include Asia as well. This marks a key milestone as we prepare for a full worldwide launch. Backed by the largest Battlefield team in our history and grounded in community collaboration, we remain firmly on track for a fiscal year 26 release with a major global reveal later this summer. So that all sounds very positive there. Great to hear that they are going to be going with fiscal year 26. We're not going to have to wait too long for the game. Again, I really do think it is likely that it comes out this year. They could, for sure, release it next year. But then just as the ball gets rolling, people really dive into the new Battlefield game and they're looking for some seasonal content perhaps, then GTA 6 is going to be launching in May, right? So what I think they're going to do is launch the game in October or November. They're going to have time to get out maybe a season or two of content, and then they will just work around the release of GTA 6, and during that release window of GTA 6, they'll just kind of take a bit of a hiatus from releasing any seasonal content for the new Battlefield. Now let's get into the juicy stuff here, because this is where the analysts from various banks, investment companies start asking questions. And this one comes in from good old Eric Sheridan. He is always there and he always asks some brilliant questions. So he says, thanks so much for taking the question. Maybe I can ask a two-parter on Battlefield. Given the approach you took to sort of have the game out in the community sort of in a beta test over multiple quarters now, what have been some of the key learnings about how to position Battlefield for creative and commercial success? And how would you compare some of those learnings to prior versions of the games and what you have learned from bringing the game to market in prior years? And here is what Andrew had to say on that. He says, this Battlefield, as we said many times, is the biggest Battlefield we've ever made. And of course, you would expect us to say that. Yeah, we kind of would, Andrew. But we've certainly had the biggest team behind it, and we've given them as much time as they need to get to real quality aligned with our core Battlefield community. If you go back to our Battlefield, all the way back to Battlefield 4, I might argue that we've released incredible games every time. Well, not every time, not Battlefield 2042 or 5, they've always been high quality. We've always worked closely with the community. No, not really, but we haven't always worked as closely as we should have. We haven't always really worked to help them understand the things that we're building and for us to understand the things that they really want out of a Battlefield. Okay, this second bit is true. Yes, they haven't understood what we want out of a Battlefield for some reason, even though we've literally been shouting it from the rooftops. But I don't really like this statement from him here to even insinuate that Battlefield 2042 was an incredible game of high quality is just a massive disservice to the gaming industry. Never mind Battlefield. I also don't like the gaslighting. He's sort of saying, oh, you know, they just didn't understand what we were trying to build. No, like, we understood perfectly what you were trying to do. You were trying to trend chase with Battlefield 2042. We just didn't like that, okay? Let's just tell it like it is. Anyway, let's continue here. We know that when we get it right, Battlefield is a giant franchise and often the biggest shooter in the year. And so this time, we wanted to ensure that one, our player base and our global community had a better understanding of the things that we were building and how we were building and some of the approaches that we're taking to building. More importantly, we wanted them to have the ability to feedback on map construction, weapon lineup, progression, all the things that make Battlefield great at Battlefield scale. And given that this is the biggest Battlefield ever, there was really no other way to go about that other than Battlefield Labs in the way we have. And I would tell you, we've been overwhelmed by the feedback, not just the positive feedback that our players are giving us around what we're doing, how we're doing it, the scale and the nature of what we're doing, but also just their willingness to deeply engage with us through this process. You know, hundreds of thousands of people have weighed into this and really given us feedback that is going to help us tune and balance this incredible scale game. Wait a minute, hundreds of thousands of people? I mean, there isn't hundreds of thousands of people even in the test, right? Way less players than that. So is he actually referring to people who watch the leaks? Anyway, and as we now move on to the next phase, you know, we'll start to open up to a wider audience, bringing in more across North America and Europe and starting with Asia. And so again, this is all about two things. One is helping the community understand the nature of the things that we're building, but more important, have us understand the things that they want out of this game and ensuring we're tuning and balancing and polishing in a way that is aligned with their expectations. And we know when we get that right, the opportunities is incredibly large. So all these things sound very, very positive here. He is reiterating exactly what Battlefield Labs has set out to do. I think they're doing fantastic work. Obviously, I'm not in the test, so I don't really know. But we've seen stuff, right, through the leaks. We've all seen it. Let's not beat about the bush. And it looks pretty good. Like I say, I think the only way that they can actually fumble and drop the ball here is if EA once again just don't give DICE and the other studios enough time. They have to make sure that they have the time, because even if they get the feedback, even if they're willing to listen, if EA say, okay, we don't have any more time to iterate on the game, just release it now, it's still not going to be as good as it could be. So I do hope they, you know, are able to put in as many of the changes that are needed before that release window does come around. And then another interesting question here from Andrew Marok. He says, thank you for taking my question. Now that the big major expected release has moved out of fiscal year 26 in the industry, of course referring here to Grand Theft Auto 6, how do you see the rest of the gaming industry positioning potential releases over the next few months? And how does that impact your thoughts on the competitive landscape for the Battlefield launch window and subsequent performance expectations? And he says, I'm not sure I can comment on the rest of the industry and their launches or launch timing, other than to say, typically today, games take many years to build and develop, and it's unlikely that if you weren't already ready to launch in this window, it may be hard to get ready and take advantage of what might be otherwise a less competitive window than we may have anticipated earlier. Relative to Battlefield, what we have said all along is we've been building towards a window that we thought made the most sense for Battlefield, but we wouldn't launch into a window that we thought truncated the value that we've invested into the franchise or the value that we think our players will derive from it once they jump in and start playing. I think now, without going too far, we believe that window is clearer than it was before, and we feel very good about launching Battlefield in fiscal year 26. So I think that further compounds the idea there that that window is likely going to be October, November. That is just the general Battlefield launch window that EA likes, and now that GTA 6 is kind of out of the picture there, I don't really see any reason why they wouldn't launch there. At least the game wasn't ready. So there you go, guys. Exciting stuff. Battlefield 6, Battlefield, whatever it's going to be called, coming most likely this year. Reveal trailer almost certainly going to be during the summertime. So I would say once we get through May, you know, June, July, August, that's prime summertime right there. So what gaming events do we have coming up during the summer? Well, on the 6th of June, we've got Summer Game Fest 2025, which is, of course, hosted by Jeff Keighley. Now, Jeff Keighley, of course, of the Game Awards, most of you guys will be familiar with him. He even tweeted out yesterday, as soon as the earnings call went live, that the next Battlefield and Skate will launch by March 2026. And then I would say the only other really major gaming event in the summertime is Gamescom in Cologne, Germany, from the 17th until the 19th of August. And then there's also PAX West as well, yeah, which is the 20th till the 24th. So it's looking, you know, both of those events being really the big ones during the summertime, whilst there are a lot of smaller events, you can be sure that EA want to reveal their game at one of the bigger events. It's either going to be at the Summer Game Fest early in the summer in June, or it's going to be in August at Gamescom. I would put my money on the Summer Games Fest. I think a lot of people have been guessing that a trailer may be right around the corner, and that would really be the perfect opportunity for them. So we could well be seeing the reveal as early as next month. That is pretty wild. So, guys, thoughts? Leave them below, as always. If you enjoyed the video, a like is always appreciated, as is subscribing to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in another video.